welcome to your virtual tasting. This is Stacey Jo Strombecky from Renaissance Wine Merchants, live from beautiful Jasper. Oh, look, there's somebody walking around back there. I am here. Just first of all, thank you to Liquor Select for the opportunity to speak to you about 3 of my wines. Please go see them. Awesome store, great selection, and just the greatest staff. So they wanted me to talk to you today about food wine pairing. And so the 3 wines I've chosen have no relationship per se. They're all come from different countries, very different styles of wine, and are 3 like different expressions of grapes. However, all excellent examples of what they are. And moreover, they're 3 styles of wines that, from a food and wine pairing standpoint, I consistently rely on to really show up. Almost transcending where you think they would normally go. They actually work on a lot of levels with lots of different kinds of foods, lots of different cuisines, lots of different heat levels. Everything from salads can be paired with these wines to heavier dishes like duck and pork. So let's get started, shall we? So before we jump into each individual wine, I wanted to just address that there is one component mainly in these wines that they do share in common, and that is a natural high acidity. So high acidity is really important to food and wine pairing. When you want nice, bright acidity, balanced acidity, however it shows up in the particular wine that you're trying to use for pairing, you're looking for that nice, mouth-watering freshness, that beautiful bracing quality that a wine with nice acid has. So when we think about food and wine pairing, I often go to France and Italy because they actually construct their wines to have that natural, beautiful trademark acidity that's really well integrated into the palate and just makes food taste amazing. And of course the wines taste amazing, and it works really, really nicely together. So that is one component to these wines, is they're all like higher or moderate, at least moderate acidity. And then the other key component, and I don't like to touch on this too much because it can, obviously there's exceptions to every example, but we do have a little bit lower alcohol in a lot of the wines that we're talking about today, or more balanced alcohol. Not that I don't love a big boozy Shiraz, or gosh, I love Zinfandels from California, which are really high alcohol, but they're not really often the best things to pair unless you're pairing really big foods like burgers and pizza and chilies, and like things with profound layers of flavors and a lot of spice and a lot of weight to them, because alcohol actually mutes the palate. So gone are the days where Stacey Jo starts off with a triple martini before dinner. Not that I ever did, but anyway, because high alcohol actually does mute the palate quite a bit, and can lead to, I think, you're really not getting the whole complement of flavors on your palate when you're eating. And when somebody's prepared a beautiful meal for you, or you're at a restaurant, or maybe you're traveling and you're trying new foods from different places, you want to really get all the nuances and all the flavors. So lighter wines, lower in alcohol, higher acidity wines tend to be the best thing to have with food on a general level. Of course, again, there's always exceptions to every rule. So let's get started, shall we? So the first one I wanted to bring to your attention is Riesling. The Riesling I've chosen for you is from Germany, from Reichsgraf von Kesselstadt. Reichsgraf von Kesselstadt is an estate in the Mosel-Saar-Ruhr region of Germany. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Sweet, I don't like sweet wine, or maybe you like sweet wine, but you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I know this already, Stacey Jo. Well, I actually on purpose chose a wine that was a dry Riesling, a very dry, bracing style. Riesling is the grape that taught me about acidity, because it can have quite a bit of sugar, upwards of 20 grams per liter, and still have a refreshing quality on the palate. It really has so much acidity, even in versions that are extremely sweet, like say ice wine. You have a beautiful high toned acidity still existing there in that super, super sweet dessert style of wine. So, the Germans and many people who produce Rieslings often will do a dry style, maybe an off-dry style, maybe an actually sweet style, and then some will do dessert wines, because Riesling translates beautifully into all of those profiles quite nicely. So I did, though, on purpose, choose a German wine that has no sugar or very, very little sugar. And the reason for that is because, one, that's my style. I love dry Rieslings. I adore the Rieslings of Austria, which are naturally dry. And I love Australian Rieslings from Eden and Clare Valley, this bracing acidity that just kind of like makes your mouth water for seemingly hours. Anyway, one thing you want to look for when you're looking for a German Riesling that has that drier quality is the word Trocken on the bottle. So Trocken means dry, or sometimes you'll see Halb Trocken, Halb Trocken, and that means part dry. So these wines are allowed to have a little bit of sugar in them, but the acidity has to be high enough that it still gives the perception of a dry wine. So I think at lowest you'll see 3-4 grams per liter, and at high maybe 11. This one sits right around the 7 grams per liter, so not technically sweet. In fact, I think less sugar than some of the New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs on the shelf these days. So really, but fairly absent of sugar, and moreover, extremely fresh and absolutely crunchy, crispy acidity, which will make for such a beautiful food wine. A little bit on Riesgraf von Kesselstadt. They're an estate, as I said, in the Mosel-Saar-Ruhr region. And this particular estate loves to hone in on really great vineyards. So they actually have a monopoly on a famous vineyard called Joseph Hofer. They source from the best Peace Porter area, Goldtropfen. And also they source from this beautiful vineyard in the Ruhr tributary area called the Kaesler, and this is really, really fine slate soil, so you get this beautiful minerality on top of all that fresh acidity in this wine. So Rieslings, as I mentioned, they can be grown many places. We do a beautiful job in Canada. We make awesome Rieslings, of course, that are made in Austria. I love the Rieslings of northeastern Italy and Australia, and then lots of other places. I'm sure I'm missing at least 3 or 4 that are notable Riesling producers. So Rieslings can really have a wide range of flavors on the leaner side, lime and Meyer lemon, to even like really ripe flavors when you get these riper styles of Rieslings like apricot and pineapple. And what you're going to look for, though, is more than fruit from a great, German Riesling anyway. Florals like jasmine, beautiful notes of honeycomb, and even in aged Rieslings, you can pick up really odd aromas like petroleum wax or petrol. But again, whether it's young, whether it's old, whether it's dry, whether it's sweet, this really, really beautiful high-toned acidity. So, Riesgraf von Kesselstadt, Kaesler Riesler Trocken should be light and bright on the nose. You're going to get a really, really vibrant, fruit tone. I always get real notes of citrus from this particular vineyard. And then on the palate, it should be dry, it should be fresh, and it should be kind of lighter bodied. So with the lighter body, it's going to feel like it's washing away. Now, light body doesn't mean poor quality or less good than full bodied. Light bodied is just a measurement of the weight on the palate. And so when we talk about body, we're usually talking about how it sits and, why it washes away quickly, is so that you can, I guess put more in your mouth, but you're going to want to have that really beautiful, I guess I'm trying to say, like a light body is going to have the quality to sort of match with lighter foods. So Rieslings are, always just a absolutely dynamite pairing with appetizers, especially spicy appetizers, especially when you've got a touch of sweetness, but even the dry ones I love with spicy food. Anything with spices and herbs is a great pairing with Riesling. For me, Riesling with cheese. Of course, we're going into the cooler weather, so fondue season. Yep, this is absolutely one that I love. But don't be afraid with like a whole myriad of meats. Even though it's lighter bodied, we often as sommeliers pair Riesling with pork dishes, with bacon, with shrimp and crab dishes. I have no problem pairing a beautiful duck dish with Riesling, because while it is light bodied, it's completely a fully actualized wine. It's got a lot of complexity, and a lot going on that can really add to the flavors of the wines. And for you vegetarians, not missing you, anything with like a natural sweetness to it, like carrot dishes, squash, and then again, spicier things like onions and peppers go beautifully with Riesling as well. So there's a lot of play. For me, a Riesling like this is a natural with like a nice, Thai green curry, or maybe a chicken sausage plate with some sauerkraut and potatoes. I love it with pad thai. I make a great pad thai at home, and this wine goes really nicely with pad thai. And then last thing, just a little more emotional standpoint. The winemaker for many years, from the early 1980s up until 2016, was Annegret Ray. She was a daughter of Gunter Ray, who owned the vineyard, and she passed away actually in 2016. So the wine in your bag is a 2015, which would have been the last vintage that she produced. And she was a wonderful winemaker, very well respected in Germany, especially in the Mosel. And I hope you enjoy the Riechgraf von Kesselstadt Riesling Kaesler Trocken. Next on the lineup would not be a tasting with Stacey Jo if we didn't talk about pink wine. And I just absolutely love, the variety of rosés that we're getting in the market now. For those of you who've been coming to my tastings for a few years, it's, one of these things I felt passionately about for a long time is not only drinking rosé just because it's fun and it's delicious, but also to have a wide variety of rosés available, because, summertime rosés and wintertime rosés can look very different. And rosés that go with, a nice salad versus, a spicy pork loin on the barbecue can look very different. So rosés can be this absolutely spectacular thing to have in the fridge in a wide variety of colors and flavors. I've chosen one that's one of my favorites, one that I, probably drink an embarrassing amount of. Anyway, the rosé is in fact from Italy, and so most people would expect me to pick a French rosé, but the Italians have really been coming into their own with their rosés. Widely popular in Europe as the rosés from the south right now in Apulia. They make beautiful rosés all over the country, but I really hone in on these minerally rosés from the coastal regions. So this one I have chosen for you is from Tuscany. And this is from the Mazze family, and it's called Belguardo, which is their estate. So they are a producer from Chianti, but they have two other estates, one in Sicily and one in Maremma. So that's right on the coast. So you're on top of beautiful sunshine and moderating factors from the Mediterranean Sea, you get a little saltiness and salinity in the wine. So Belguardo's very famous estate for their reds. They make a top super Tuscan red that is consistently on the Wine Spectator top 100, and very, very exciting wine. But for me, the buck stops at their whites and rosés. I love them. They make a stunning Vermentino, but really the rosé probably gets the most action in our house because it's really such a great food wine. So rosé in general can be a very big category in terms of how it shows up. You can have notes ranging from like red berry and vegetal notes to rose petals to more like dense wines that are a little spicier and plummier, and like a more of a fruit burst, like that kind of grapey candied kind of quality, say from like a region in Spain and Portugal. And then everything in between. Where this rosé falls is definitely, they're using stronger grapes. They're not using the more delicate tones like you have in Provence, for example. But the wine itself is actually very, very nuanced, very finesse driven and elegant, and lots of acidity, which we know is great for food and wine pairing. So the Belguardo rosé is half and half local grape. Of course, they wouldn't be almost Tuscan if it didn't have a little Sangiovese in it, but this has a little Syrah as well. So 50 Syrah and Sangiovese. This is dry. It's a little more light to medium bodied, so moving into the medium bodied, and it's about a medium acidity. So Rieslings can have higher, fresher acidity, but most Rieslings I really like with food have kind of light to or medium to high acidity, which really balances out. The great thing about rosés is you're fundamentally using red grapes, so you get the red grape flavors and profiles, but you get the white grape freshness and the white grape acidity and the white grape the style of white wine that we love that just generates so much like beauty in the palate that washes away the taste of food. So this is something you can safely play around with lighter dishes like a salad with some fresh chev and berries on it in the summertime, but it'll translate nicely into fall and winter with a lovely charcuterie board, light pastas, any kind of cold appetizer. I adore rosés with southwestern and Mexican cuisine. I think they play really nicely with herbs like cilantro and fresh bright flavors like fresh lime and all those kinds of what I think of are fresh flavors from Mexico. So the rosés really work nicely with there. But one of the best parts about rosés is it makes a great party wine or entertaining wine. I know you're not doing a lot of entertaining right now because of COVID, but one day you're going to have people over again, and you can just serve some rosés with your spread of appetizers and charcuterie, maybe some fresh fruit. Beautiful, beautiful option, and it will dance gorgeously with spicier and hot appetizers, and really also just be a nice space for the cool appetizers to play in. So rosés, big fan, and I just love the Matze Belguardo rosé so much. Hope you enjoyed as well. I'm gonna move on to a red. Now there's a few reds that I love with food. Chianti from Tuscany. I love Beaujolais from France. But when I was at Eden Dining Room in Banff for many years, and we had a pairing program where you'd have to have a lot of different wines open for all the different dishes we had, and consistently always had California Pinot Noir in my tasting program. And the reason for it is because you get sort of the best of both worlds. Love Burgundy, one of my favorite wines in the whole wide world, but Burgundy can almost be on sometimes the too light side, or to get that depth of character that you need for some dishes, you need to spend a little bit more money. On the flip side, we can have really big styles of California Pinot Noir that are, a great example would be the wonderful Belle Glace, which is, borderline, it's the Pinot Noir for Cabernet drinkers. But in between that is a whole realm of wines, beautiful Pinot Noirs from our home country, Canada and New Zealand. And then there are producers in California who are, absolutely looking more for that terroir-driven style, much like we see in France. And to me, the buck stops for Pinot with Josh Jensen and Calera. So Josh Jensen started Calera in the 70s. It started off as a single vineyard Pinot project, and he wanted to really show the world that California had great terroir, and he found this place in Hollister with these beautiful limestone soils, and he's really become a Central Coast, go-to for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Calera actually means lime kiln, and so if you can imagine, you're in Hollister and you're driving up these mountain roads all the way to their beautiful estates, looking over the Gavilan mountain range, and it's just so stunning up there. But what is important about this region is these limestone soils and how they translate to wines like Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, because these are the kinds of soils they look for in Burgundy. You really want more earthiness, more nuance, and again, acidity in your Pinot Noir when you're making them to complement food. What else do I want to say? Oh yeah, the other thing about this particular Pinot Noir is it's mountainous, so windswept. So we think California, we think hot, and absolutely there's some great examples of these chewier, richer, riper Pinot styles. But in the mountain ranges, you get obviously more wind, cooling effect. You get cooler nights but nice sun-soaked days, and so that big day to nighttime temperature change often makes for a really grape with a lot of personality, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A lot of personality, a lot of fun to drink. So let's talk about Calera. So here is the Calera Central Coast Pinot Noir. Now, I did mention that Josh Jensen started this winery as a single vineyard project, and this estate still does make a bunch of single vineyards, beautiful vineyards all over the Central Coast. But who better to make a Central Coast blend than somebody who understands the nuances of all the different areas so well. So the Central Coast blend is a lot more accessibly priced than the single vineyards. They're often in the $125 to $180 range, even if you can even find them. They're very special and rare. But if you are a Pinot Noir lover, I encourage you to find them because his Pinot Noirs are absolutely spectacular. Pinot Noir, well, it's, grown here in California, and I alluded to Burgundy, is grown all over the world. And, we do some good, we do a good job of it many, many places on the planet. And it is the world's most popular light-bodied grape for a reason. I mean, again, it's not a qualitative thing to say light-bodied. This means this wine has so much complexity, but still is like light on the palate and can dance with so many different flavors. So with that, Pinot Noir can exhibit a big wide range depending on where it's grown of flavors. I always look for lovely red fruit tones. Florals, spice notes, especially in California Pinots, again ranging from more savory Pinots like you might have in the Calera to almost baking spice and cola spice notes that you might have in a riper Pinot from the south of California. But ranging big range of fruit flavors, cherry and raspberry, and then you get those earthy flavors like mushrooms, spicelands like clove, and beautiful florals like hibiscus in your Pinot Noirs. So just so much more going on than just kind of one note. So this earthiness and this lovely, delicate fruit quality are what play so beautifully with food. Pinot Noir is an absolute natural wine with, like fowl, especially roasted fowl. So obviously we just passed up Thanksgiving, but turkey, Cornish game hen, squab, duck. Absolutely, any kind of fowl we pair Pinot with. Pork loin, another great, sort of whiter meat that works really nicely with Pinot. I know many people love, the fattiness of salmon with the earthiness of Pinot Noir, especially grilled. So if you're a fan of planking salmon on the barbecue and having a red wine with that, Pinot's your baby. Pinot's what you want to go with for that. But again, if you're not eating meat, there's no better red wine for like vegetarian food than Pinot. It's earthy, and so it really pairs like magically with mushrooms. It pairs with earthy root vegetables. I've done it with beet dishes, like a beet and goat cheese dish. So many different kinds of things you can play around with Pinot, and because it's light bodied, it still has it can handle a vinaigrette. So if you're doing like a salad, it can, but it will, because it's got some oak to it, can stand up to a little bit of grilling, a little bit of roasting, all kinds of those cooking methods as well. So a lot of spaces that it can go in. Now, if you're just a big red drinker, if you just don't want, to do Pinot Noir, look for something a little bit, with a little more volume. So you can get fuller body Pinots, absolutely, from California, like I'd mentioned. And there's other kinds of grapes that will give you some of this quality, but have a little bit more oomph to them, like a Barbera from Piedmont, for example, or a Great Beaujolais from France. So there's other options, but to me, Pinot's just, it's my number one grape, actually. So expect this to be dry, expect it to be lighter bodied, nice kind of soft to medium tannin, like satiny, so it's not going to have that dry mouth kind of sandpapery feel you get from Cabernet Sauvignon, and really low tannins. Make for nice kind of silky palate, which works with a lot of different things. I should mention too, all three of these wines that put out with just a nice cheese board absolutely work great on all of those different types of foods. So I hope this helps. I mean, to me, wine goes with food. This is part of our daily bread at home. We love having a great wine with dinner, a great wine with friends, and some lovely nibbles. So these are three wines that you can just have in your house to enjoy with food almost any time. And if you get really stuck, please visit your local wine shop. Fine Wines by Liquor Select, as their staff are very knowledgeable and they can guide you to something that might be a little bit more your taste. Thank you so much for being with me, and hopefully I'll see you in person soon. My goodness. Have a great day and enjoy your wine.